Well, there we go. What a disaster. And welcome to brand new Dylan Knows, which is synonymous to disasters usually, but in this case, technical problems on Geri's end this time. But you know what? To be fair, years ago when we started this, so many years ago, I had multiple technical disasters, so we're sort of evening out now. I need to send you the shirt now that you sent me.
That's right.
100th episode or something like that. So that was my 1 year. I was right, the 1 year anniversary you sent me. So, yeah. I'm always afraid to wear it because if I wear it, it's going to have technical problems. It says Dylan knows technical problems. It's hilarious. It's awesome.
Back it made sense back then.
It's funny though, but welcome to another episode 134. Wow. Feeling old.
That's a lot of episodes. Wow.
If this was a comic book, that's out in the comic book stores, this would be time to reboot the comic store and go back to a new number one. So, not going to do it though because I'm not going to do that. But this is Dylan Knows, my weekly talk fab podcast chat TV something or other thing that I do every once in a while. And this is the second week of the month, and that is our list show. And my co-host Geri and I, we pick something and we count them down. So, hey, Geri, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing? Sorry for the delay. That was my fault.
Okay. Did you get any snow yesterday?
No. Yes, but it melted before it even hit the ground. Like no accumulation. Just we saw the white stuff. We're like, what? Yeah. We wanted to go to the Red Bulls. It's a soccer team that's in Newark. And last night was their autism awareness. So like part of the proceeds of your ticket went toward autism. But it was like 36 and like it said it was going to snow. So it's so funny because I saw photos from the stadium and it was like empty, like barely anybody even bothered to go. So it's a shame, because I guess you plan something for April, you think you're going to get decent weather, even like 50 degrees. But no, this weather's been very strange this year.
Yes, because next weekend we're going to be going to Hershey Park, and it's going to be 66 and sunny. So
there you go.
That's gorgeous weather, for this time. It's appropriate.
That's what you expect, right?
Yeah. So I can understand. That's a shame though, but it's pretty nice now. Yeah, it was a weird day with us because when I woke up about 3 a.m. because the damn cat was annoying me, I went out and looked outside. It was coming down pretty good snow, but only accumulating really like on cars and the grass. Mm-hmm. And then when we got up a few hours later, it was pretty much gone and then turned to rain. And then periodically there'd be a little burst of snow here and there. And then we were out. We had the snow, I swear, looked like the astronaut ice cream, those little balls.
Oh, yeah.
It looked like it was coming down. It was kind of weird on that end. Then again, it stops, sun comes out, it's still cold, and then we get back to the house, and then it's like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock at night, and I go upstairs to lay down, and I'm looking out my window, and there's a heavy snowstorm coming down. I was like, geez, make up your mind.
Yeah. There's a little comic going around Facebook, and I've seen it like with different states, but it'll say like a day in New Jersey, or for you guys, a day in Maryland. It starts out like they're just like, in long sleeves and jeans. A couple hours later, they're like in a t-shirt. Then a couple hours later, they're in their coat. And a couple hours later, they're in like their bathing suit, because it's like all in the course of one day,
And that is exactly how it is. And we all know it. You too. It's that Eastern Seaboard. Yeah, that Eastern Seaboard thing. But so that's a disaster. Can be conceived as a disaster if you want to. But disaster movies have made a big return recently. The master of them is Roland Emmerich, and he's actually appears 3 times on my list. So, he's of all the directors, he's the one that's done the most. But it's his bread and butter. He loves to destroy cities and towns and stuff like that. And with the special effects you can do now, it's a lot different than the old days in the 70s with the Poseidon Adventure and what's the one Earthquake and then the Towering Inferno, stuff like that. I like to consider myself a cinephile, but I've never really watched any of those movies. I think I might have caught bits and pieces of them. Yeah. So most of my list are more recent ones. They're all pretty recent ones, to be honest. I think the oldest one might be 96 or something like that. But that's just there just seems to be though that was the trend in the 70s, and then that sort of disappeared, and then they've sort of come back roaring back in the 1990s. So in the 2000s. So. That's what we're doing. So we're doing top 10 disaster films. Should be entertaining list. And as always, we'll start with Geri at number 10.
All right, my number 10 was from 2003, and it was a movie called The Core, and it starred Aaron Eckhart, and I think Hilary Swank was also in it. So the premise of the movie was that this geophysicist discovers that there was some force or some reason why the Earth's core stopped rotating, which obviously will wreak havoc on the entire planet. So with this happening, the magnetic field starts to deteriorate, and they realize, we got to do something because our atmosphere is coming apart. And they devise this plan to travel into the core, and they're going to ignite, I think it's either a nuclear bomb or just something to get the core going again. Just very campy, fun, typical, oh no, what's going to happen? Are they going to make it? Are they going to survive? And then the problems that occur as you're entering into the core of the planet. So that was my number 10.
To be honest, I totally forgot about that one. So it's not on my list, but yeah, no, it's there because it's the thing with these disaster films is they always tend to follow a certain formula. It's going to be, it follows a bunch of different groups of people, and some of them are going to die, and some are going to have issues with relationship issues, and they're going to solve their relationship issues, and then you're going to see massive destruction, and a dog is always going to live, that type of thing. So you get that kind of thing. So it's the core is very similar to that. And again, it's, while they're drilling down there and the trouble they're getting to get down there, they have all the stuff that's going on with the deteriorating electrical, magnetic field. Thank you. Happening. So you see what's happening up on Earth while they're doing that. So, this one, my number 10, actually is more of a sci-fi film that was on Sci-Fi, but it did have a theatrical release briefly. And I think you know what it is. It's Sharknado.
I got my honorable mention.
I had to put it on mainly for the fact that the first one of this whole series was, your typical sci-fi film, but it didn't quite have the insanity that the other two have had with all the cameos and all the stuff like that. The first one was a basic, straightforward storyline. They didn't think anything was going to happen much about it. It was just what sci-fi likes to do is they like to take two things and slam them together. So Sharknado became it. It's a tornado with sharks in it. And to be honest, these films, are not necessarily the best films we've ever seen, obviously, but considering the damage and disaster that is, it fits into our criteria of being a disaster film. My problem with the first one is that the Sharknadoes really only appeared at the very end, was a major threat at the very end. Basically, the majority of the film was basically sharks in Los Angeles, which just means the Pacific Ocean overflowed into all the crevices of Los Angeles, and the sharks were riding around, and then you had to survive getting through Los Angeles without getting eaten by sharks. So, it's campy, as I said, campy. The other ones got even more campy, and then the fourth one is coming out July 31st. So it's continuing, and it makes a lot of money. It gets a lot of ratings for sci-fi, and I don't foresee the series ending anytime soon. Number 5 will be The Next Generation, and stuff like that. So, but all in all, it's still an entertaining sci-fi film, and that's my number 10.
That's funny because that was originally my number 9. And then I thought of a different movie this morning, and I was like, all right, I'll move that over to honorable mention because it's, of course, worth the mention. And my number 9 is an old movie that I had forgotten about. It's from 1983. And it's back when we were still sort of like in the Cold War with Russia, and we were so afraid of the possibility of a nuclear attack. Now, in 83, I was 10 years old. And it was this big deal back then because, as Dylan and I have said in the past, back then there were no DVDs or DVRs. Things were shown once, and if you missed it, you had to wait till the next year. And I remember the night that it was going to be televised, it was this huge, publicized event. Our teacher talking to us, I don't know if your teachers did too, and just saying, it's something that everyone should watch with their families and be careful. And it's going to be scary and frightening to you, but it's something that could happen if, we don't amend relationships with Russia. And it was a movie called The Day After. And it popped in my head this morning, and I was like, okay, I'll put it on just because it scared me. And of course, okay, grain of salt, like you were saying, the movies from the 70s and the special effects, they're a little lacking. But basically, it takes place in the small town in Kansas. And everyone's going about, their lives. So you've got Dr. Russell, who has his schedule at the hospital. Then there's a woman who's can't wait to get married. She's all excited. She's going to be a new bride. And then Steve Guttenberg was in it, funny enough. And he's deep into his graduate studies. So he's in school and he wants to graduate. But alas, the unthinkable happens. A nuclear bomb is dropped. And then the rest of the movie just shows the aftermath of what happens. Like, God forbid if there's a nuclear war, because this was very scary back then. And the thing that I remember scaring me the most was when it dropped, the radiation would just sort of travel and chase you. So the people would be running away, but then once it goes almost like a cloud, but once it hit you, all of a sudden you hear a zap noise and you turn into a skeleton, which if you watched it now, I think if my kids watched it now, they would laugh because they've been so desensitized to that, violence and that sort of thing between zombies and sci-fi and what have you, and comic book, villains and Transformers and all of that. But back then, to see this human body turn into a skeleton was very, very scary. So number 9 had to be The Day After. I had to stick that into my list somewhere.
It's really funny you said that, and this is why I love doing the show with you, because we seem to have similar things. It's not on my list, but what I do is when I'm making up my ideas, when we get the idea what we're gonna do, I list a whole bunch of movies that are going to fit that theme, and then I look through it and I pick which ones I want to talk about or ones that I like. The Day After's on there. It's right there. My note right there. There's the Day After under the crappy Armageddon. So there's that. So it crossed my mind also, and yeah, it was a big thing. 1983, we were both 10 years old. I honestly don't remember them talking about it in school. Mm-hmm. They very well might have, but I don't really remember if they did or not. The one thing that's weird that I do remember about it, and I'm trying to think about it now, is I think my dad took me to a car dealership or something like that. He was going to get a new car or something like that. And while he was talking to, it was the bank to get a loan for something, maybe house repairs or a new car, something like that. So I'm sitting out in the lobby while he's talking to the guy about doing that. And there's a magazine. And I don't know why I remember this. It's like Time Magazine. It was like the cover of Time Magazine was the Day After. And so I think I looked at it and I read it and stuff like that, or just looked at the pictures at the time. Maybe I couldn't read. I think 10 years old, I could probably know some of the words. Yeah. But I just looked through. And I knew the Day After, obviously, because it caught my eye. I was like, oh, interesting. So that's a weird thing I remember about The Day After. And I do remember when you just brought that up with the people flashing into skeletons, I remember that now too. But yeah, it's one of those that was like, wow, it was a event film. And as you said, there was no DVDs or cable. Well, there's cable, but there's no DVDs or anything like that. And so if you missed it, yeah, you were kind of screwed, because you might luck out. They might air it in the summer again, but usually they waited another year or whatever. And it was a big thing about the Cold War. It was a fear. That's a big fear that we had about the Russians and the Americans. The Russians had the same fears we did also about us dropping them, but our scenario was that we were making the Russians be the bad guys, so we had to do this. So my number 9 is a film directed by Mimi Leder called Deep Impact. Now, yes. Hollywood tends to have this. I don't know what their problem is, because there's no new ideas in Hollywood. But they tend to have. There's an idea. Let's have a comet or an giant asteroid heading towards the Earth, and it's going to destroy the Earth unless a plucky group of adventurers stop it. And then so one film production crew comes up with that, and then another one says, that's a good idea. Let's make our own version of it. So that was I think that was the second year. The first one was the dueling volcano movies. The second year was the asteroid/comet going to hit the Earth with Deep Impact and Armageddon, because they came out at the same year. So for whatever reason, and the thing is, you would always, and then they would do, this isn't a disaster film. They did the Mars movies. They did Red Mars and Mission to Mars. So you'd have all these, double shots of films, that were both ideas, and they were both released around the summertime. And there was always one, it seemed like to me, that was more scientific, and the other one was more action oriented. And we'll get into that when I get further down the list.
That's true.
And
good point.
in this case, Deep Impact was the more scientific one, obviously, since Armageddon was done by Michael Bay. But regardless, Deep Impact was, it followed once again, a by-rote story. It followed a group of people. Morgan Freeman was president of the United States. Elijah Wood was the nerdy kid who discovers the asteroid that nobody knows about, and then discovers, oh shit, it's on its way to destroy the Earth. And so then they have Robert Duvall as this old school astronaut who's going to lead the young guns up to destroy the asteroid, similar to Armageddon, which is actually funny because they did what you probably would do. You probably wouldn't hire drillers to send space to drill into an asteroid like they did in Armageddon. You would train astronauts how to drill, or at least in this case, it was place bombs or whatever. So I think it was Robert Duvall, Ron Eldard, who was a guy from ER, which is where Mimi Letter is from. She was a director who directed a lot of episodes of ER. And so when she came to do films, she brought Ron Eldard over like that. And then there was Lily Sobieski, who was that young Helen Hunt lookalike, played the love interest of Elijah Wood's character. And so basically, you have all these stories going on, people preparing for the end. Oh, and what's her name? Taya Leone's in it also. And Laura Innes as well, who's also another ER person. And basically you have, all these different characters that are all connected in some form or another. And, Elijah Wood, and the basic premise behind it is that the American government has, for whatever reason, I guess they have time. I guess the asteroid is far enough out, and Elijah Wood discovered it, that they have like 2 years or something like that to prepare things, which makes a little bit more sense than what they did with Armageddon. They sort of made it seem like you only have a week to do all this stuff to get it done. Whereas if I recall correctly, Deep Impact had about a 1.5 to 2 year time frame before the asteroid was actually going to threaten the Earth. And that actually, to be honest, that is why a lot of these asteroids that you see articles about that say, oh, it's going to be coming near the Earth, and it seems like they just popped up. If there was an asteroid that was coming to Earth and was on a collision course with it, there's no way we could stop it. We would know way in advance. It's not like one would just pop up and say, oh, look, there's an asteroid going to hit us in a day. No, it's going to take some time. Exactly. So it's going to take some time. So I think, from what I recall, it was like a 1 to 2 year difference between when it was discovered to when the asteroid was supposed to threaten the Earth. The main reason why is because the government decided they were going to create things called arcs, which I guess were, I'm trying to remember if they were spaceships or if they were just like cave things that would survive like really deep into the surface. They would survive. Right? Yeah. I think it was because basically when the asteroid would hit the Earth, it would throw up the dust, which would cause like a nuclear winter, which was the main issue with nuclear bombs, was that it would block out the sun and cause crops, stuff like that. I guess they set these arcs up all over the world, and they had them stocked up for like 10 years underground or something like that. And they were huge. I mean,
yeah, and only certain people could get in them. Because I remember the scene where Elijah Wood had to say goodbye to his parents because they were going in.
Yeah, there was a lottery. There was a lottery that they had to do, and certain people were allowed to go in there. So I guess you had a little bit of that in there as well, sort of a social thing where you say, okay, who's going to get in there, who isn't? Well, you got to get scientists in there. You got to get teachers. You got to get government officials. You got to get some animals in there. You got to get some plants in there. So they would pick and choose. So basically, they were just doing arcs, and so they had this whole lottery thing, but it was just basically once again it was more of a setup for the coming disaster. And then I think, again, sort of similar like Armageddon, one splits off because I remember the giant tidal wave that wipes out Taya Leone and her father, Max von Sydow. Sorry, spoiler alert. But and that was the one that on the beach. Exactly, because you had the estranged father, and the mother who's got cancer or something's going to die, and she gets gets to go to the lottery because she was reporting it, but then she gives it up to be with her dad, who she's it's very melodramatic. It's very Lily Sobieski, who's like 16 years old, is in love with Elijah Wood, and the two of them are going to get married, and her mother had just had a baby, and they weren't allowed to go into the ark or whatever, but she was, because Elijah Wood was allowed, so they gave her the baby to it's just all this melodrama and stuff like that, and in that way it's kind of, we get it, let's see some more destruction, but in that case, that's what differentiates it from Armageddon, which is basically a pure-on action film for the most part, and that's where you get those things. So that's my number 9, Deep Impact.
It's a good one. That one didn't make my list. That would have been an honorable mention enough. Yeah. All right. My number 8, I think we've talked about in our We Hate lists. But I had to make this list because I was like, all right, aside from how we felt about it, it is a legit disaster movie. And that was The Day After Tomorrow, with our favorite Dennis Quaid and Jake Gyllenhaal. So there's, a big freeze, and the whole world, there's superstorm, and then the whole world freezes over, and then Jake Gyllenhaal and his friends kind of get caught in New York City in this frozen library. And Dennis Quaid, who is like this really awesome, what's he, like a geologist or like a climate weather.
Like yeah, exactly.
Of course, he's like, on the other side of the world, but he figures out how to get into New York and try to save Jake Gyllenhaal and his friends. And, it's a disaster movie. It's natural disaster. And you get to see the earth, the planet freeze. And then there's the iconic images of the Statue of Liberty. And I'm sure they show things from other countries all frozen and destroyed. Yeah. And it's like, oh no, what if? And, sort of this call of attention to global warming. Wasn't a great film, but it was a disaster film. So high on my list. That's why I made number 8. It was worth a mention, It
is, and it's actually actually higher up on my list.
Okay,
so,
there you go.
Just because of the pure disastering of it, because it starts off as a flooding disaster, because that's when they flood New York City, and you've got the shots of the boats running through the streets of New York City, and they're going up, and they're trying to survive in the subway, and then they got to get out because of the water rising, and then you've got the big freeze coming, which is really funny, and it's really great. A couple weeks ago when I did my solo show, I did a shout out to a YouTube site called Cinema Sins, and you should check it out, Jerry. I think you would love it. Have you heard about Cinema Sins?
I think you've talked about it.
Yeah, I might have mentioned. Yeah, it's basically where this guy just takes and he destroys every film. And talks about every little mistake and in a very snarky way. And The Day After Tomorrow is a great one that he tears apart. And the biggest thing about that is the freeze is only going to go about maybe as far as maybe North Carolina or something like that.
Right.
All around the world, it's still going to be warmer below. So the United States just says, "F you, Mexico. We're moving everybody to Mexico." And that just made me think recently. Is like, you know what? If Trump becomes president, there's a wall, and that actually happens, we're fucked because.
To break that awesome wall, that trainable wall that he's going to put up. Yeah.
But then you got to think about those that if you're going to go to Mexico and tell them, hey, guess what, we're going to take over your country. No, they already got millions of people already. Where are you going to put everybody?
Yeah. I know. We're so unassuming. We're just like, we're coming. Yeah, get bed ready. We're on our way.
And I understand what he's trying to say. He's trying to say, oh, look, we're flipping the immigration thing now. Where the Mexicans trying to get to America, now the Americans trying to get to Mexico, and then we're pissed at them because they don't want us to come over here. When we're illegals. Right. It's a whole. But yeah, and then there's like the wolves that just happen to be wandering around in the frozen wasteland as and the fact that, and this is the other funny one, is that the freezing, which has been freezing basically everything, decides we're not going to freeze the library where the kids are because they have a roaring fire and they're burning books.
That's right.
This freezing is like 120 degrees below zero. It would destroy.
Encyclopedias can keep up.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a bad film, but it is a disaster film beyond reproach. And again, it's a Roland Emmerich film, so we'll talk about we might talk about, but we talk about pretty good, but that's a little bit higher up on my list. This one, I don't know if you've heard about this one, and this sort of, when I was thinking of movies, sort of popped in, like, you know, how Day After popped into your head. This one popped into my head, and I thought about it. I was like, it could be conceived sort of as a disaster film because it's such a different type of preference, but at the same time, it's kind of similar. The movie's Reign of Fire. It's got Matthew McConaughey and Christian Bale, and basically it's when Christian Bale was a young kid, his mother discovers a dragon
I love that movie.
in hibernation or something like that, in the Brea tar pits or something like that. It gets released and comes out, and nobody knows how to defeat a dragon because, you know, it's tough. No one expects it. And it has the fire. It destroys weapon, you know, the missiles and stuff like that. And I guess there's a bunch of dragons. I think there's not just one, that a whole bunch of army of dragons are all in hibernation, and they all come out, and eventually they destroy the world and turn it into a post-apocalyptic world. Then they jump like 25 years, and Christian Bale is now Christian Bale, you know, and Matthew McConaughey is this crazy,
he's
former
awesome
soldier type of guy. Yeah, he is really great in the film. He's, you know, it basically is like the guy in Moby Dick, Captain Ahab, you know, who is obsessed with destroying the white whale. In this case, it's the dragons,
and it mother.
Shows, the mother dragon, and so it's a post-apocalyptic world, but it's just. I put it in there because technically it is kind of a disaster film with the dragons going in and destroying the earth and turning it into this post-apocalyptic world, and then running it and reverting present day world into a medieval type of times because no electricity, no power. And that's just a really neat film. And it's one I need to check out again because I've only seen it once, but it still resonates with me a little bit. And Matthew McConaughey is just totally, it's good to see him playing kind of like an asshole bad guy in this. It's really cool. And I said, but it has similar feels to, you know, the giant creatures destroying cities, like the Godzilla film, stuff like that. So in that case, it's sort of similar to a disaster film. So that was my number 8, Reign of Fire.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish I would have thought of that one. I really like that movie. Let's see, my number 7. Well, mine isn't really, this number 7 isn't really like natural causes type of disaster. So this was a book. I had never read the book, but I did go see the movie at the theater, and it was with Brad Pitt, and it was World War Z.
Okay.
And so the premise is there's this lethal virus, and once it gets into your system, it makes you become extremely aggressive, almost like this aggressive, violent zombie. And if you bite somebody, then they get it, and it's like this instantaneous thing. So it doesn't take very long for like the whole world to like go to hell, and everybody turns into like these crazy, I don't know if zombie's the right word. They're just really aggressive.
They're supposed to be, though. Yeah, it's his version of the zombies. Yeah,
a zombie.
It is. Because, you know, that's the thing about zombies. Yeah, they can change up and do it whatever way. But go on, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, so just Brad Pitt plays Geri Lane, who's a UN investigator. So basically he needs to go and protect his family, and then he's off figuring out with this group how to either stop it or, you know, what we're going to do, because the infection ends up starting to spread worldwide. And I mean, effect-wise, really cool. And like I said, they're very aggressive, and the cinematography, and just it's very like rushed, and it makes you feel like they're running out of time. And I like that because like when we went to see it in the theater, it sort of threw us into that world. Granted, like I said, I never read the book, so I have no comparison as to how close it was to the book, or if people like the book over the movie. I come straight from seeing the movie, and I thought that they did a great job with it.
I think you should read the book. It's not on my list, but the book is really good. And basically, it's different because it's a oral history of the zombie apocalypse. So basically, it talks about, they interview different people. And the guy who's writing the book, the book in the fictional world, he's interviewing all people after the zombie apocalypse has happened. And then he's going to put it in chronological order. So he goes and he talks, Dr. Schmidt is the guy who's the first person who discovered the virus. You know, tell us what you think about it. And so then Dr. Schmidt goes on and says, okay, it was a Monday, you know, and these guys came in, and he starts going to detail the science, stuff like that. And then he moves on and says, okay, General Lane is the guy who started the attacks of the National Guard trying to stop it, and here's his experience with it at the beginning. And at the beginning, this is what happens: they become blah 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 blah, and then gradually he interviews all these people, and then you see the progression of the series. And there's like interviews more people. It's like, okay, we got the upper hand in this one sequence when such and so did this and such and that, and then this is how it ends. And General Lane says this is how it happened on our end, and the doctor says this is how it ended. So you get all these different perspectives, but it's not as an oral history. It's actually really cool. And I don't know if you knew this or not, but the writer of it is Mel Brooks' son, the director.
Oh, get out of here! Brooks.
Yeah, it's his son. I didn't know that. He also wrote the Zombie Survival Guide, which is basically, I would say, is what pretty much started this whole zombie. People loving zombies was the release of the Zombie Survival Guide, which is basically, it's what it says. It's a typical. It looks like a nonfiction survival guide written that way, but how to survive a zombie apocalypse. And it was great, and it became such a big seller. And then eventually people said, you know what, zombies are pretty cool, aren't they? We haven't used them in a while. And then you start seeing, the Walking Dead comic comes out, and then World War Z comes out, and then things start spiraling. And then Frank Darabont's like, we should make Walking Dead into a TV show, and then that continues its trend of it being. So I think his first book, The Zombie Survival Guide, is what jump started the whole zombie craze. So it works. It is technically, a disaster film can be really anything. It's a very fluid description, because when you hear disaster film, you automatically think, oh, you mean like, buildings blowing up by weather or stuff like that. But then there's like stuff like with zombie attacks or dragon attacks, or just anything where a major disaster happens via earth or people. And so, that fits into everything. My number 7 is another Roland Emmerich film, because he loves to do these disaster films. This one is 2012.
Oh yeah.
And unfortunately, it's basically a lazy rewrite of all the disaster films he's done, but with new characters and a little bit more of a threat and a bit more of a worldly experience of just sticking around in America. But it follows the same general process: chauffeur, driver, just actually it starts off with a professor discovers there's something going on, and that lines up with the 2012 prophecies of the Mayans, and then things start happening, and before you know it, you hear that the chauffeur driver trying to get his ex-wife, whose new husband is a dick, and you're trying to get her back, and then they go through, he's driving through buildings that are collapsing around him. There's earthquakes and volcanoes and floods and just everything under the sun happens, and he happens to be able to survive every single one of them. And then it focuses, goes back. Paul Giamatti's in it. He plays the professor who discovers the stuff, and it's his scientific side, trying to solve the problem scientifically. And then we follow the people who are trying to save the people, and then you follow the guys who just wants to get back with his ex-wife and save their kids, and all this crazy stuff happens. And so this is basically what it is. But it's like it is. It's the bottom of the barrel when it comes to disaster film, because that's all it is. It's a straight up, okay, I don't give a F anymore. I'm just going to say, okay, earthquakes and volcanoes and hurricanes and just everything, because it's the end of the world, 2012, and it came out in 2012. It was like, this is what's going to happen in December, and then of course it didn't.
We're still here.
We're still here, and that's the basic premise of it. I mean, there's not really much more you can say about it, but it probably should be number 1, because it is a terrible movie, but all it is destruction. That's all it is. There's a little bit of character development in it, but not much. It's just, let's move from one thing to another. And then there's a cool scene where you actually see one of the Buddhist monks, near the Himalayas. They're the highest mountains in the world. He's on top of this mountain, and he sees this water just flowing, and it's like, oh geez, it's not so high anymore. It's crazy. It's a weird movie, but it's all disaster, and it's my number 7.
I remember that one. Now it makes me wonder if the director took all these scenarios and wrote them on a piece of paper, threw them in a jar, and just pulled them out and said, okay, this is the order that we're going to have each thing after this. And we've got like an hour and a half, 2 hours to fit everything in.
Exactly. There you go.
My number 6, it was, is from 2013. And it's actually a pretty cool concept. It was called Snowpiercer. I don't know if you ever saw that one. Yeah.
I haven't, but
so,
I know. Mm-hmm.
Oh, so yeah, there's another ice age hits the Earth, and so I guess they know it's coming because they have time to build this. It's referred to as a super train, and what they do is they build a track that goes around the Earth, and it takes the super train 1 year to circle around the Earth, and there's like it's like endless. There's like hundreds and hundreds of cars and all the people that they get on it, but not only do they put the people on it, but they sort them. So toward the beginning of the train, you've got like the wealthy, the high class, the elitist, and as you go down, it's down to like the poor and the more poverty stricken. They get like barely anything to eat, and living conditions are awful for them. So they're aware of the passage of time because one loop is 1 year, and so they do celebrate the holidays as they go, but they can't go outside because the temperature is supposedly so cold that you would die instantly as soon as your skin hits it. And so Chris Evans is a man, I think he was actually like born on the train, so he had lived his whole life on the train. He'd never seen life outside or beforehand, and he realizes that there has to be something more going on. Like, how can we live our life in these horrible conditions forever? And this train just keeps going. So he decides like he's going to plan this revolt. And there's a lot of things that lead up to this happening. And he's going to work his way to the front of the train. He wants to see who the engineer is. He wants to see what's going on over there. And without giving anything away, he does get there, which then, creates all these other events that ends up, creating the end of the movie, which it's a big spoiler. So I won't say what happens. Did you say you saw it?
I know I did not see it, but I know about it. I do know about it though, and it got. It was very well and disaster. It's a disaster. You can't go out into the world, and then you've got once again characters who you learn about, and some might not survive, some don't, some will, some won't, and sometimes they have to do things they don't want to do, that type of thing. So it fits in perfectly. Real quick before I do mine, MJ Khan, my co-host of my comic show, said my problem with the limo scene, talking back to about 2012, is why does it sound like a NASCAR race car on steroids? What kind of engine is that? So once again, it's a special engine, to get the fans involved with that. So thank you, MJ. There we go. My number 6 is, I'm going to kind of sort of not really pair it together, but I'm going to use it as a general theme. And I want to talk about this film. I want to talk about Cloverfield. Have you seen Cloverfield?
Yes.
What I liked about Cloverfield was it was such a unique idea. Found footage films are really hard to pull off sometimes, and we had that little renaissance in the late 2000s, 2009, 2010. You got like Chronicle and then Blair Witch Project was the first one to do that, stuff like that. Yes. But this Cloverfield was basically a first-person filming, found footage film about a giant monster attack on New York City. And what I liked most about it was it's from J.J. Abrams is the producer of it. He didn't direct it or write it, but he produced it. And I think it was, what's very successful is when a movie is very successful, a lot of it has to do with marketing. And he was marketing this as a totally surprise type of film. He wasn't revealing what it was, but revealing things here so that people would start discussing it on social media, like, "Oh, did you see that?" and examining things, is what's going on here, and is this, I think there was stuff like, this is a Voltron film, it was the long-awaited Voltron film that we wanted is here. It's like, no, because it had a giant creature, but it wasn't what you thought it was, but it was just this found footage first-person attack of a giant monster. And I find it, because no one really had heard that they were making this film until it just all of a sudden pops up. I think it was like during the Super Bowl, they revealed the first commercial for it, and people were like, "What the hell was that?"
Right.
And that got them excited about it. And then they gradually revealed things more and more. And then when the film came out, it was a huge hit. Actually, it did very well because the build-up and the marketing for it made it so big. And it's a goofy film because you've got normal people filming this disaster, and so they're very hyperactive and melodramatic and cursing all the time, because that's what normal people do, right? I mean, we all know they're actors. We all know that there was no giant monster that destroyed New York City. So we know this is a movie. We know they're actors, but they're trying to be normal people, and what they think people would react to if there was a giant monster destroying New York City. And so
we're freaking out.
Exactly.
Right.
And then the funny thing is, like, why are you still filming everything?
I know. Put the camera down, dude.
There's a scene where they're trying to save this girl up in the ruins of this giant high-rise apartment or whatever, and they're like, the whole side of it is out and it's like crumbling, and the guy's like, oh, look at that, whoa, look at that, whoa, look at that, we could go all the way down there, we could fall, oh my god, then stop filming the damn thing and just help the person get the hell out of there. But I mean, they're still yeah. And then the other time also is like, all right, we're walking down the subway, it's dark, and what the hell's that? And then all of a sudden, what's going on? And then all of a sudden, the reveal, it's a giant spider thing. And it jumps on the screen. They're like, he's still filming though. And then he gets hit off and kills it. He turns around, his friends are getting like eaten. It's like, I'm filming it. Look, this is so awesome. Now help your damn friends. You already beat one. Put the camera down, do something. But the fact is, it's such a neat film though, because it's from a first person perspective. And one of the coolest scenes is they're out on the street. You know, because people do that. You know, you're in buildings, you hear all this noise, like, oh, what's going on? Helicopters, guns going off, stuff like that. And they're in the street. All of a sudden, you hear, boom, and it's the head of the Statue of Liberty rolling down the street. You're like, holy shit! But it's so cool, though, is that, you know, they're sitting there, and all of a sudden, the head of the Statue of Liberty comes rolling down there. And so to me, from a film perspective, I was like, how the hell did they film all this? Green screen and stuff like that, but it looked like, you know, it looked like New York City. They looked like they were in neighborhoods in New York City, and yet you have giant Statue of Liberty heads rolling down the road and giant creatures walking around destroying things. So, you know, I liked that, and I want to sort of piggyback, you know, the Godzilla movies onto that. I'm not going to talk about the horrible Emmerich one, because that was a horrible film. But once again, Roland Emmerich wanting to destroy stuff, so he destroys New York City again with a giant creature. And then there was the one that came out a couple years ago, like 2 years ago. That was a little bit better, but again, basic premise: giant monster destroys city, and it's a good premise for a disaster film. So I just want to talk about Cloverfield, because despite the fact that it's stupid and bad, it's kind of unique, though. It was kind of a unique thing. And yes, I'm glad that he was filming his friends getting eaten by spiders, because it made it more entertaining. So that's my number 6.
Well, it's funny because, like, I'm glad you said that about the marketing, because that is what really made that film more than the film itself. And then, of course, you watch it to wait to see the big reveal of what this monster looks like. Because I think in trailers, you only saw little bits and pieces.
Yeah, like the foot, or like the hand.
Right. You're like, what is this? I want to see it in its entirety. And then the other thing was what you were saying about people not putting the camera down. It reminds me of like when you see those posts on Facebook of like a little kid getting hit in the head and falling down, or something happened. It's like, go check your kid. Stop filming him getting hurt and then laughing about it on the film. It's like the same idea. We've just become weird. We're a weird society.
Yeah, I mean, there's the ones where like this kid's at the zoo and this camel grabs his backpack and is like trying to pull him into the fence, and there's like, look at that, that's so funny. The kid's like, no, I want to get him, I'm going to get eaten by a camel, get me out of here.
Exactly.
Real quick, before you do number 5, John McGevna, who's watching, thanks John, asked, what was the name of the website I just mentioned? It's not a website, John, it's a YouTube channel, and it's Cinema Sins. So Cinema, CINEMA, Sins, SINS. They do new videos every Tuesday and Thursday, and they've done all the superhero movies. They've done all the Star Wars movies with the exception of The Force Awakens, and it's all movies. They're not movies that are out in theaters. They wait until they come out on DVD and they see them, and then they can sit down and do it. But they do stuff like they do the Pixar films. They tear Pixar films apart. They tore. I haven't watched this one yet, but they tore the Cinderella animated film from the 1950s apart. I want to see what that's all about.
Oh, that's
and
really good.
That should be a good one. And they did Snowpiercer also, which I want to check that out. And they've done basically a lot of films on the list. I mean, the ones we already discussed. They did 2012. They did Cloverfield. They've done the Godzilla movies. They've done The Day After Tomorrow. So and it's funny. It's just the guy's very funny, and sometimes he's wrong because you're like, okay, he says something. It's like, no, this is why it happened, and he didn't know. He just said, this is, I'm just finding everything that he finds wrong with it. So it's right. Cinema Sins on YouTube. Best scene in John McGivness. Best scene in Cloverfield. Folks in the tunnel and rats run up escaping something. You in trouble. Hold on a second. You in trouble when the tunnel rats are scared. That's right.
That's true.
You're number 5, Geri.
My number 5, we have talked about ad nauseum. It's been like in almost every list of everything we've done. And it's just one of those movies, you watch it every year, you have to watch it, and then you go to your picnic, and then that night you go see the fireworks, and it's Independence Day, which I guess, is it this year that number 2 is going to come out?
Yes, it is this year.
Yes. And maybe that one will start making our list too. But yeah, that one, right smack in the middle. Aliens, they've come to Earth. Oh no, how are we going to defeat them? Because they want to kill us and utilize all of our resources on the planet. And that's all I'm going to say about Independence Day, because we really have talked about it so much.
And I'm ashamed to say it's higher up on my list. So
yeah. It's one of those movies. So yeah, it's good, it's bad, it's everything. Yeah.
And again, it's Roland Emmerich. It's like that's what he made his career out of is right. Making these disaster films, and it made a ton of money. Independence Day made a ton of money. Day After Tomorrow made some good money. 2012 even made some good money. I mean, and the more the more it makes money, the more he's going to keep doing it, because with the way that computer generated things are doing, you can do a lot more things now. And I just wish he would do something different.
Nah. He's happy with his paycheck.
He directed the sequel, so of course, obviously, he's still doing it. So,
yeah.
My number 5 is, I put on here. The thing is, this is, of all the films on here, this is another one of my I like Reign of Fire. This is another one of my favorite films that maybe I should have put up higher. But when I was writing my list originally, I was going to try to do it in order of like destruction total, but then it sort of got all over gobbledygook. But I figured this one, not a lot of destruction happens, but it's an entertaining disaster film. And once again, it's part of those we talked about earlier when we were talking about Deep Impact. They had 2 films come out at the same time, the same theme. This one's Dante's Peak.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
I love this movie, and I'm not ashamed to say it. I love Dante's Peak. It's one of my favorite films. It's really entertaining. You got Pierce Brosnan in between his James Bond films, and you've got Linda Hamilton. Hi, buddy.
Hey, I know it.
You got Linda Hamilton, who is, everyone knows, Sarah Connor. And the basic premise is Pierce Brosnan is a really good volcanologist guy who knows all about volcanoes, and goes and if there's a volcano threat, he and his team go to this country and they assess the threat to see if it's going to explode or if it's just being an asshole or what. And if it's gonna explode, they get the people out of there. If it's just being an asshole, they'll say, "Hey guys, look, we've been doing all these scientific tests on it for a week. It's not changing. It's just smoking. It happens all the time, So he and his wife are. It starts off with a flashback. He and his wife are at this one volcano, and they get out of there, but unfortunately, they're too late, and a piece of rock comes and kills his wife, and it sort of wrecks his life. So he sort of goes on an exile almost. Oh yeah, you just see your wife get killed, So it wrecks his life. So he sort of goes into exile and doesn't really do a lot of these events anymore. He's more of a consultant now. And so we then cut to Dante's Peak, which is a one of those little cool cities that I would probably love to live in, out in like the Pacific Northwest, Oregon or Washington State or whatever, surrounded by gorgeous mountains and trees and forests, and just small little town, just really kind of cool. And Linda Hamilton is the mayor of the town, and she has just gotten a important factory they're going to build a plant outside of Dante's Peak, and it'll increase money to Dante's Peak. It'll have people who can get employed there and work there. So it's a big boon for this small little town. And they're at the foot of this volcano called Dante's Peak. And that's why the city's named after. It's named after the volcano that erupted thousands of years ago, but has been dormant since. But they've been noticing, the volcano groups have been noticing there's some erratic energy, some earthquakes and smoking and stuff like that coming from there. It's like, we better check it out just to make sure it's okay. It's been dormant for centuries. It's probably nothing. So they decide to send, it looks like an easy slam dunk. So they send Pierce Brosnan's character, just go up to Dante's Peak, check it out. He'll be fine. And so he goes up there. He meets Linda Hamilton, of course. He's smitten with her because you got to have a love story in there. And it's been like 3 years since his wife died. So it's, time to, I guess, move on. And he's probably lonely, and he meets Linda Hamilton, and she's the mayor, but she also happens to be a single mom also. She's got 2 kids. Her husband left her. And unfortunately, her former mother-in-law, still lives in the area and still kind of treats her a little roughly, but is still willing to babysit the kids and help her out. And she also Linda Hamilton also runs a coffee shop up there. So obviously it's probably Washington State then, because it's all coffees. So she's doing all this stuff. So he comes and he stays at the hotel and goes and does his investigations, and something doesn't smell right to him. He's like, I think something's going to happen. And so he calls up his crew to come up and help him with all their equipment and stuff like that. And then meanwhile, he talks to the mayor and say, hey, maybe we should consider an evacuation possibly, because I think it might erupt and it could destroy the town. But of course, all the community people are like, no, it's like Jaws. Like, no, it's going to destroy tourism. And we just got this big factory. If they learn that the town's going to be destroyed, they're going to move out and we're going to lose all this money. So you're an idiot. So we're not going to listen to you, because they do this in every movie. Of course, then the crew comes up, and then of course, because it's a disaster film, they come up and they do their scientific things, and they don't find anything wrong with the volcano. So they're like, you know what? You used to be good, but, your senses haven't been that great, and we're going to be leaving tomorrow. And he's still sticking to his guns. But, the mayor's stuck between a rock and a hard place. She likes him, but at the same time, she's beholden to the community leader. So she's like, okay. And so, of course, it's his last night. So 2 of them are going to get ready to hook up. Which is true. I'm not making it up. It's true.
Ready to hook up.
They are. It's true. They start making out, and she's like, "Oh, it's been a while since I've done this." Blah blah blah. And then all of a sudden, something happens, and the daughter, of course, cock block. Her daughter's like, "I want a drink of water." It's like, "Okay, I'll give her a drink of water, and then she'll go to sleep. I hope, and she can get laid, But so she goes to the sink and she turns the water on, and it's like sludge. And that's like bingo for that. And Pierce Brosnan's like, I got your damn proof now. Something's going to happen. So he wakes up his team and says, you guys are wrong. F you. This town's in trouble. And here's the proof. So they go up and they discover, yes, something bad is going to happen. And then they're all of a sudden the instruments start showing, oh yeah, shit's going to happen. So after, he has the initial feeling that bad thing's going to happen and he recommends evacuation, they say no. And then nothing happens. And of course, it's going to happen, and it's going to happen like in 12 hours.
Seconds, yeah.
So now they got to see if they can get the people out. So of course, they wait until like the middle of the day to get a meeting and have the town people come in, and then they say, okay, you should probably evacuate. While they're in this meeting, all of a sudden, yes, Dante's Peak explodes. So now you've got a volcano exploding. So now it's them all, and so basically, then you've got all them panicking. getting out of Dante's Peak, and and of course, the bad community leaders who were assholes to him get killed, and just in a bad way, and all this just stuff. And then there's a lot of unbelievable things that happen. There's a truck that Pierce Brosnan is in that the bridge out of town is backed up, and so he needs to get somewhere else. So he goes into the water and is able to ride this truck with like just the windshield above the water, is able to ride through the water and get out of there. And then they go up the hill because the mother-in-law doesn't want to leave her cabin because she's an idiot. So they have to go to save her, because even though she might not know her husband or her son left Linda Hamilton, it's still her kid's grandparents, so she may not like her, but we got to save her, and eventually they do, and then they get cut off, so they're up in the middle of the mountains with the volcano having the ash and stuff like that. So they got to cross a lake. The lake is now acid. I did not know that happened. So the lake turns to acid, and so of course people die, people get hurt, and then eventually it turns out to be right. But the fact is, despite that, how dumb and stupid it is, there's just something about the movie that's a lot of fun. It's the chemistry between Pierce Brosnan and Linda Hamilton is actually really cool, and just the everyday life. It is. Maybe I'm a bit biased because it is a type of place that I would love to live. Not with the threat of a volcano erupting, but the middle of the mountains in a nice little town. I mean, it's not like in the middle of bumblefuck nowhere. I mean, you've got, restaurants and you've got Targets and stuff like that, so you've got big stuff. I love Dante's Peak, and it's my number 5.
Oh, that's a good one. I like that movie too. Yeah, you sort of it's a kind of movie you just take it for what it's worth and you just have a good time with it,
And it was the more scientific one of the 2 volcano movies too.
Oh, so. Absolutely. Yeah. All right. My number 4, I'm actually quite proud of because I was able to get a Tim Burton film onto my disaster list. And
awesome.
And it also has Pierce Brosnan. What?
Oh, yes. Now I know what it is.
Why did
I do that one?
Yes. So Pierce Brosnan plays Professor Donald Kessler. And one day, out of the blue, a whole fleet, of Martian spacecraft starts hovering and just hovering over all of the cities of Earth. And the president, who's played by Jack Nicholson, of course, is concerned. But Pierce Brosnan's character is like, no, it's fine. They're here on a mission. It's going to be friendly. So they all get together thinking, great, we're going to meet these really friendly Martians. Let's take in a meeting. But then it turns out they aren't so friendly because Mars attacks.
Great film.
Yes. And it's Tim Burton, and it's campy, and it's silly, and it's funny, and it's serious, and it's dumb, and it's everything all rolled into one. The Martians are so funny. They're kind of like goofy and creepy and scary. And but yeah, it's good. And like, what I love the most about it is the death scenes, the way the Martians kill everybody, because it's just so outrageous. It's just so funny, and it's up there. So yes, Tim Burton, I think, had to have a lot of fun with that one.
Yeah, he did. And you know what? He was able to do that because he gave them Batman Returns, and he gave them Edward Scissorhands and Beetlejuice, and he was very successful. That's how he was able to do Ed Wood, and then he figured, okay, Mars Attacks might be something more along the lines of it might be popular. And that's again, and I just realized it. It's again the comparison with the 2 movies with similar themes coming out. Independence Day came out the same year as Mars Attacks. Right. Mars Attacks was obviously less successful, but it is more fun. And I agree that, and it didn't even cross my mind. Yeah, it didn't even cross my mind because it is. It's the aliens with the yak 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 yak. It's great. Yak 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 yak.
And they're only like this big, like they're not very big.
And then Jack Nicholson actually plays 2 roles. He plays the president, and he plays the Las Vegas guy who's going to build that casino also. And it's funny. And then you got the first lady is Glenn Close. It's like, my God, that's awesome. You got just the casting itself. You got Martin Short as secretary, one of his, secretary guys, and then you've got Michael J. Fox as a news reporter who is kind of sleazy, which is great to see him, do that also. And you've got Jack Black in it. Jack Black plays the asshole soldier. He's the one who's the asshole brother to the hero. I forget the young kid's name.
Yeah.
Lucas Black or something like that is the hero like that. Natalie Portman is this. Yeah. This is how great it is. The daughter of Jack Nicholson and Glenn Close is Natalie Portman. And that's freaking awesome. It is, and then you've got Sarah Jessica Parker and Pierce Brosnan, and just a cast of thousands. And it's a lot of fun. My favorite scene is still when talk to them, and they have this joint thing of Congress, and the Martian ambassador comes up, and then he pulls something out, and they're all afraid that he's going to kill them, and he starts talking like yak 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 yak. They don't understand what he's saying, and then he stops and he pulls out his gun and kills all of them, and then it cuts to the old lady who's watching. She goes, ha ha ha, they killed Congress. And Annette Bening plays Jack Nicholson's other wife in the casino guy, who is a new age type of person. Danny Elfman's music is fantastic, and it's a disaster film. And the way they defeat the aliens is freaking hilarious with the Slim Women song. It's like, come on, man, really? But it works. It's so funny though. And
it works. It's weird, and it works. Yeah.
I do have a story that I tell you about that. They filmed sequences in Washington D.C. Actual Washington D.C. It wasn't back. They didn't. They probably did. A lot of background shots. But I mean, I think the storyline with Jim Brown and the other actress, his wife, that was D.C. So I went to D.C. once with my sister and brother-in-law before I met Don. I was like 95 or something like that. And we went down there, and we were walking around the mall, and we looked over by the Capitol building, and there was all these cannons and army vehicles. It's like, what the hell is that? And then I think some guy walking by or police officer or whatever said, oh yeah, they're filming Mars attacks over there. I was like, oh really? That's really cool. So so we were actually in DC when they were filming portions of the film. So that was kind of neat. The other thing I remember about it was how depressing the box office was. It was a disaster box office ways, and there was no more proof than the fact that it took me a while to actually see it. I didn't see it when it first came out. It was like a couple weeks later that I went to the movie theater to see it. Now, before, as I said, it was like 96, I guess. There wasn't. Why did I guess it was only playing. I guess it was only playing at a movie theater out in Timonium, which is a little bit of a hike for me. I still hadn't had my car yet, so there was a bus route that took me out there though. So it was in December. So I remember it was like December. It came out in the winter, and so I took the bus out there some December day. I had the day off of work or something like that, and I went to the Timonium Theater where they were playing Mars Attacks. I was the only one in the theater.
Oh my gosh.
It was so weird. But it still was kind of cool because it was all by myself, and it was wintertime, so when I got up there it was like 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock. And by the time the movie was out, it was dark because it was winter. So just kind of neat. But I mean, it's a good film, and that's one that surprised me that I didn't make it into my list. Wow. Sometime, we're gonna have to do sometime, not next month, maybe June. We'll do top 10 Burton movies. I'll tell you that'll be on there.
Ooh, yes.
I think we can do that. How about that? We'll set it up for June. I like that idea.
Yeah, that works.
We'll tell you.
I won't say no to that.
We'll tell you we're doing in May at the end of the episode today. So, but real quick, before I do my number 4, I think I got a couple of comments here. Scott McDonald. Scott McDonald said, Twister is one of my favorite, but it's not really a disaster film. Yeah, it is, Scott, and it's going to pop up very soon in my list.
Yeah, it's on my honorable mention.
And then MJ was like, have you learned nothing from sci-fi? Nothing good comes from living in the middle of the mountains. And then Scott McDonald's act. And then John McGavin was like, great movie. I'm assuming he's talking about Dante's Peak, I hope. Both at Helena McGavin and I watch it whenever it comes on one of the cable channels. So Good. I'm getting some good interaction today. My number, actually, to be honest, Geri, my number 4 we already talked about is day after tomorrow. So I just moved it up there. I moved up that high because once again, when I was starting the list, I was like, it has a high damage count and stuff like that. So I made my number 4. We talked about it though, so we'll leave it at that. Your number 3.
I don't know if we talked about my number 3. You think you may have just mentioned it, but it's Bruce Willis and Ben Affleck have to save the world. And it is Armageddon. Did we talk about Armageddon?
No, I mentioned it because of it's coming out with Deep Impact.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So in Armageddon, as opposed to Deep Impact, they only have a very short amount of time because, oh my God, here comes the asteroid. It's going to, or the meteor, whatever the heck it is, it's going to come and kill us, the asteroid. So Billy Bob is this NASA guy, and he was like, okay, we have to. The only way we're going to be able to stop this thing because we don't have enough time is to break it apart. But how do we break apart this huge asteroid in space? Well, drilling people, they can go in there and they can break it and drill it with their big giant drills, blah, 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 blah. Cut to Bruce Willis, who's sort of this head of a drilling team, and they're a bunch of misfits, and you've got Ben Affleck, who's also dating and secretly in love with his daughter, and he doesn't like that, and blah, blah, blah. You're just shaking your head. It's
no, go ahead, tell me.
No, because it's another one that we've talked about so many times. So Billy Bob gets this idea. Let's get these drillers together in like a week or 2. We're going to train them to be like astronauts so that they can survive the space trip it's going to take to get there. And then when they get there, all that'll just come naturally to them. Forget the fact that it's zero gravity and everything else, the elements of space. They're just be able to like drill on this asteroid the same way they do on Earth. And the plan is to drill and I guess throw in like a nuclear device, fly away real fast, and then blow the asteroid up. I mean, yeah, it's still going to cause damage to the Earth, but it'll cause it in bits and pieces in here and there, as opposed to just one big asteroid coming down and boom, killing the Earth. So that's the plan. There's this very funny montage of them, getting ready and doing all their astronaut training and drills. Oh, they show the one time drill doesn't work. Oh shit, we're in trouble. Then there's more montage and they try again. Oh shit, the drill doesn't work. We're in trouble. Then third time, they got the drill to work. Load it onto the space shuttle real quick because we got to go the next day, kind of thing. Yeah, it's entertaining. It's stupid. It's very, very stupid. But it's Armageddon. I mean, come on. If it comes on TV, you're not going to change the channel. You're going to leave it on. You're going to watch it for the 3,000th time. So it's my number 3.
You might.
I know.
There's no again. Yeah. We talked about my disdain for Michael Bay, and I'm not going to go that much further. But yeah, I will give him credit on the aspect of he did take the disaster formula with all these characters, and you have them, and you got the guy whose ex-wife is pregnant or something like that with his kid, or they need to come together, or his one that doesn't think that his father's the hero, but he's a hero now, type of thing, and you got to have just Bruce Willis trying to kill Ben Affleck because he's dating his daughter is just bizarre. It's like, yeah, okay, you might not like it, but why are you going to try to kill him? It's just, but it's to prove that they're, to show that they're all these, bad guys. You got like Steve Buscemi and all these tough guys, and then they hook up with like the Russian team, and the Russians help them out also, because I remember Peter Stormare from Fargo's in there as well, and I'll give him credit, that he knows how to make a very rah America, fuck yeah, type of film, and uses lots of pictures of American flags and soldiers and people with flowers and stuff like that. MJ Khan says Armageddon made me lose all respect for astronauts. How hard can that job be if basically anyone can do it? Watch Deep Impact, MJ. We just talked about that. They reverse it for that. So, but yeah, no, I mean, and look, it made it, and in that case, once again, Deep Impact was the scientific one. Armageddon was the rah action film one. And look, it made a ton of money. And to be honest, it's my main issue with it is the fact that, and one of my main keys about why I hate Michael Bay is he doesn't know how to keep his camera steady. Now, in this case, I guess you can make a case for you're in outer space and the spaceships are shaking and getting hit by rocks and stuff like that, you're going to need to have that shakiness, but it makes me sick. you know, and I can't see what's going on. You hear people talking, but then it's like, whoa, what's going on? And then it's like a close up of Bruce Willis. He's like, what? And then whoa, you know.
So, and they're on the asteroid.
But I think that's my main issue with it, with that, and some of the characterization of it. But again, if you like disaster films, it is again a very, like 2012 is. It is like it is the epitome of a disaster film, because you get all the beats in it. You get destruction of major cities, because doesn't poor New York get hit again in the beginning of the film with like the first bits of the asteroid?
Always New York.
You think it would hit something else, you know? I mean, New York is destroyed in like every one of these films. You think, hey, why don't we try Chicago once? You know, I mean, LA.
I'm surprised Vegas doesn't get, because in Vegas they still beam that thing off the with the Egyptian casino, and they have got the beam that you can see from outer space.
Yeah, exactly.
What you're getting hit. Go to Vegas.
Yeah, you can see it. It's right there.
You see it. Yeah.
But, I mean, I guess, you know, New York being being New York, you got New York and DC. It's mostly New York. It's like New York is the one that gets hit every time. DC occasionally gets some stuff done to it. Los Angeles, of course, is the other one that gets done to it, and that's really about it. I mean, you know, Chicago is a pretty big city. You know, that got destroyed.
They can't be bothered.
It got destroyed in in the Transformers movie. So, you know, I guess you have that going for it. You know, and you know, you do get to see some of the other stuff. You know, you get to see some Boston, and but you know what the cool thing is? Baltimore's never been destroyed.
I know.
Even in ID.
Maybe it's implied though, because it is so close to DC. So if you destroy DC, the rebels going to go and hit Baltimore.
I guess. But they never, you know, they never, like in Independence Day, they never mention that it hits Baltimore. It's like, oh, we've hit these small cities, and then it's gonna hit these other small cities. Meanwhile, Baltimore's here, like, hey, we're a pretty big city, but hey, you didn't hit us. Awesome. Yeah. So Baltimore's probably the best place to be during a major national disaster. My number 3 is the second volcano movie, called Volcano. I talked about Dante's Peak, and Volcano is the action version of the, you know, as I said, there's always the two. One is the scientific one, and one is the action one. Volcano is the action one, definitely. You got Tommy Lee Jones and Anne Heche, Gabby Hoffman, and Don Cheadle. And again, you know, you've got your typical things. And this time they get to do a little bit more of a racial thing. And hey, this time it's not New York, it's Los Angeles. So there you go. You got that going for it. Basic premise is, you know, it's kind of an interesting idea, is the La Brea tar pits, which are actual tar pits, are in Los Angeles. What if there was a volcano under there, actually? That's why the tar pits are still there. You know, maybe because there's an active volcano or an extinct volcano that's becoming active again. So, of course, it's in the middle of Los Angeles. So the volcano erupts in the middle of Los Angeles. So Los Angeles is one of the most populous cities in the country. So now you got to figure out a way to, you know, save people and get the lava out of there. And also, so you've got the earthquakes and the volcanoes. So lots of buildings collapse and people get killed and stuff like that. But they come up with this absurd plan because it's magma, and magma doesn't stop for anything. And they said, what we'll do is we're just going to channel it into the ocean. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to follow. We know the way that the magma is going to go. So let's put walls up and keep it a channel of magma, take it to the ocean. It's not going to happen. You're using stone or concrete that's going to melt due to the magma. The magma is like almost as hot as the sun, for crying out loud. You know, maybe not as hot as the sun, but it's hot enough. And it's already melted lots of stuff, but they're able to channel it in there. But obviously, to make this channel, you've got to clear out neighborhoods and buildings. And of course, then you've got the the racial stuff going on with the white cops, you know, not helping the black neighborhoods, which is in the path of the volcano lava. But then, of course, eventually something changes and they start working together and are able to help evacuate the poor parts of the city. And then you've got the ash coming down and buildings coming down. And like Tommy Lee Jones's daughter, he's like a single father. His daughter is like trying to save a baby, and she's right by a building. It's getting ready to get detonated to make room for the lava. So he's got to run and save her before it detonates, because if they don't detonate it at that time, it's not going to work. You know, so he's got to do that. Yeah, and then of course you've got Don Cheadle, who is like Tommy Lee Jones's partner or something like that, who's at the volcano labs, you know, doing the doing the scientific stuff, you know, talking to him through walkie-talkie, stuff like that. While Tommy Lee Jones is on the ground with Anne Heche trying to clear out the path and stuff like that. But again, it's more action-oriented. And it's just kind of fun also. I mean, it's fun to see Tommy Lee Jones as, you know, when he chews the scenery, pulling his fugitive type character out, making him more of a volcano guy. And but adding that little impact of him being a dad also, and you know, flirting with, this is the bizarre thing, flirting with Anne Heche, who is like 20 years his younger than him, and it's kind of a little eerie, you know, that he's flirting with her. But then the whole race thing, you know, with the white police officers and the black community eventually working together, and then when it does succeed, because come on, everyone knows in these disaster films everything's gonna, you know, succeed and things are gonna be okay. You've got, you know, all the ash on everybody, and they're all gray and black, and this little girl is like, I can't tell what color anyone is. It's like, yeah, throw the racism at us. Yes, I do understand. Yes, it's good. You know, a disaster like this brings people together, and this is how we're just gonna put the exclamation point on it. Is that the ash? You know, you can't tell who's black or white. You know, so it's a nice message, I guess. But just, you know, and that, once again, that's what works for these disaster films. You always try to throw a little message in there, or you follow these people and make sure that and you feel for them and stuff like that. So that's my number 3, is The Volcano.
Was that the one where I remember watching a volcano movie where they drive, the guy's in a truck and he drives over like a little bit of lava, but it doesn't like burn the tires? Did that happen in that one? Because I remember I was saying out loud, the tires would have melted. I don't know if it was that one or not.
It might be that one, because I know in Dante's Peak, Pierce Brosnan is driving a truck over the lava and the tires are on fire. Okay. So it might be Volcano then. They might have that one. That's the thing also with Dante's Peak, you know, he drives over the lava and the tires are burning and he's still able to drive through it. Okay.
It must have been that one. Yeah.
And the other thing we missed out is that we got to save the dogs too. And there's a dog that ran away and has somehow found the exact spot where they are. It's like miles away, and he's waiting on top of this rock with his lava coming around, and the truck just happens to drive by. The lava is burning the tires and they're slowing down. And they're having trouble getting out, but we got to save the damn dog. And the dog jumps in. It's like, yay, everyone's happy. The dog's alive. Meanwhile, someone just died a few seconds ago.
Doesn't matter. The animal got saved.
Exactly.
All right, so my number 2. Oh, sorry, that was your number 2.
That was my number 3. Yep.
My number 2 is another. I don't know. I kept throwing in these zombie-like type things, and it's 28 Days Later. So in this movie, there is a caged chimp who's infected with a virus called Rage, and he's in a medical research lab. And then you cut to this character in London named Jim. He's just this normal guy, bike courier, and he falls into a coma. And when he wakes up, it's a month later. He wakes up, he comes out into the city, and it's all deserted, and he doesn't know why. And it turns out that he runs into like this group, and they're all running away from the zombies that have been created from this infection through the chimps called Rage. And so he's with them, and they're trying to escape. And I think it's something like they can travel during the day, and the zombies come out at night. If I'm wrong about that, you can tell me. I think that's how I seem to remember it, because I saw this a long time ago. And so they're making their move or whatever, and then they have to like huddle in for the night and hope to survive them. And what's cool is at the end, they did make a sequel to it. Is they think that it has affected the whole world, when really you find out that it's just sort of been contained only in the UK. And then it opens up all these questions for the sequel as to like the why, what happened. You remember, because he woke up and it's a month later, so he's only getting his information at the same time that we, the viewers, are getting our information. So it's like, what is actually destroyed? What's going on everywhere else? They have no way, no radio communication, no nothing. And it's cool because it's sort of it's apocalyptic, but it's not, but it is. But then it opens up all these other questions. So it almost becomes a movie within a movie, like it becomes more because there's more to the story. And I made that my number 2.
Oh, that's good. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Real quick, before I do my number 2, Scott McDonald says, talking about what you thought about the truck driving over lava.
Yeah.
He thinks it was a sci-fi movie, truck driving over lava, maybe end of the world. He doesn't know.
Okay.
And Scott, I'm glad you're still with us because my number 2 is Twister.
Ah, there you go.
And even though you said it's not really a disaster film, it actually is. It kind of fits into the mold of it. I mean, when you hear disaster film, the majority of things you think about are disasters on a massive scale, which is not always the case. There are tons of disaster films out there. San Andreas just basically covered California, 28 Days Later was just the UK area, Dante's Peak and Volcano were just specific areas to the world as well. So you could technically put it that way. But yes, Twister is absolutely a disaster film because, again, you've got the same, every disaster film has pretty much the same ideas. You've got a group of people, you get to know some of them, the different characters, and then their interactions. And then, of course, there's always a couple that's split up or, still love each other, but they're moving on or not moving on, and they're trying to get back together, that type of thing. And then someone dies, unexpectedly, or, there's a dog, or something, there's all kinds of stuff. But Twister fits that mold. And it's actually it's not only it's a fun film, it's a film I love to watch also. I know Scott loves it. But I love it too. And the basic premise, and everyone should have seen it by now, but for those who haven't, there's a group of tornado chasers who have come up with an idea of how to develop, how to get an idea of what a tornado is made of, so that they can maybe do some advance warning if there's possibilities that a tornado could form. If they can get information about how a tornado forms by throwing these probes into an actual tornado and getting the makeup of it, they can maybe have a early warning device so that it's okay, this has all the signs that a tornado is going to hit. Everybody evacuate your city. You got about maybe an hour or whatever before the tornado hits. And then, of course, like magic, the tornado will hit in an hour and hit it. So that's what they're hoping for anyway. So they're hoping that, their job of a tornado chaser is you basically go out and you hope that there's going to be a tornado so you can chase it. You don't know for certain if one's going to happen or not. You're just sort of out there waiting to see, okay, it's going to happen or not. So it follows this group of tornado chasers. And there was a guy played by Bill. I always get him, Bill Pullman and Bill Paxton. I get those two mixed up a lot. In this case, it's Bill Paxton. He had left the group because he was tired of it and things weren't working. And he and Joe, who was played by Helen Hunt, were dating, and they sort of broke, or they were married. I'm sorry, they were married and they broke up. And so he's gone on to be like a weatherman, and he's met another woman played by, I want to say Jamie Gertz, or someone else. I think it's Jamie Gertz who plays her. And she's a therapist, a sex therapist who helps people with their, sex problems, stuff like that. So, she is coming out because they're going to get married. And in order for them to get married, Bill Paxton has to get divorced from Helen Hunt. They haven't signed divorce papers yet. So he sent him to Helen Hunt before, and she sort of ignored him because she's trying to get back in with him because she still loves him. But he's able to find where she is and to bring the divorce papers out to her and to sign it. And of course, because it's a disaster film and because it's one of these films, it wouldn't be a film if this didn't happen. It is the worst day for tornadoes ever. Where there's 5 classes of tornadoes, and in this one day, it's more like a 24-hour, 36-hour period, all 5 class tornadoes pop up in this one day. And they also are getting ready. So now it's like, okay, now we can get our scientific stuff going. Of course, Bill Paxton is now a weatherman, and he misses the visceral pleasure of chasing tornadoes, but he just wanted to leave and start new because he didn't know he was confused or whatever. But of course, once you're salivating now, it's like, oh, there's a tornado, and oh, the stuff I've been working on with you guys for years, you finally succeeded in working. Well, let's do this. So of course he goes out with her and the crew, along with his fiance, who has no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
And they go and they chase tornadoes to try to do all this. And so of course everything spirals from there, and they end up, running into all the different tornadoes and dealing with that and getting too close and stuff like that. It's your typical disaster film, and it's a fun one. It's another one of those that I can watch all the time whenever it's on TV. I'll watch it all the time too. So that's my number 2. Real quick, MJ Khan says 28 Days may just be my favorite zombie pick ever. Selena, that machete was no joke. So
yeah, that's like Michonne stuff there.
Your number 1?
My number 1 is very serious film, and sort of like a no joke and kind of sad. And it was a book, and I read the book first, and it was by Cormac McCarthy. And then they made it a movie, and it's called The Road. And basically, this is a little bit different because it's sort of like the world has already been destroyed. So this is basically everything post. And the relationship basically is about a man and his son, and the hope of trying to find safety and travel through, the U.S., because they are in the United States. I forget like where. Just because it's that hope of, can we continue on with the human race? Can we survive? There are a lot of like bands of really bad people and gangs that are just sort of like killing each other, and they've given up. And he wants to instill in his son, who's maybe about 10 years old, this hope that no, there's got to be good people out there. We got to try to find them, and then if everyone bands together, we can sort of, recreate society. And it's very intense, and it's not like any of these campy, disaster movies. But I wanted to put it on there just because, they do show what can happen. It's a really good snapshot of, what can happen, what the world could really be like in a serious way, instead of just being like, oh, all these crazy things happen that can't really happen. It's very real. And so basically the goal is to get to the ocean because they hear that maybe there are other survivors there and that there are good people there that can help. And he basically needs to find help for his son because he's sick and he doesn't know how much longer he has, and he doesn't want to, God forbid, die and leave his little boy all alone, to fend for himself in this crazy world. So that was my number 1. Totally different from the rest of the list.
It's okay, but you know what? It's fine because not a lot of films focus on, okay, what happens now? After a massive disaster like we've seen in most of the films we've talked about today, we never see what happens afterwards. It's assumed as a happy ending. It's like, oh, look, we're all happy. We all survived. We're all back in love with each other. But yet you've got cities that are destroyed, infrastructure that's destroyed. You got to redo. You got to redo electricity, water. You got to do all this stuff. You got to basically rebuild a freaking city, okay? Mm-hmm. Because this city has been destroyed, and yes, and then you got to clear the dead out because you can't have dead hanging around here like that. They need to do sort of films like that. You need to see, okay, what happens after? Yeah, everybody's happy and so forth. But you know what? What about volcano? Here's a good example. How's life now going to be in Los Angeles? You got a freaking volcano in the middle of Los Angeles. So you got a passageway of lava that's now blocking, major thoroughfare in Los Angeles. Now, how's that going to happen? You've got all these buildings, you got everything, you got to clean this stuff up. How are you going to do that? Dante's Peak, how are you going to rebuild a small town that's been utterly destroyed? And so like it's something interesting you need to think about. And Reign of Fire was sort of similar like that. You get an idea of what happens after. Mm-hmm. And this one you said also what happens after. So that's a good one. It's something you need to see a little bit more. And and it also goes to show you that even though I've been saying most disaster films could be considered as sort of goofy stuff like that, there are some out there that are a little bit more serious. We talked about my number 1 is ID4, Independence Day. I just figured the massive destruction caused by the aliens, the rah-rah Americans, let's destroy the aliens in the most stupid way possible by giving them a computer virus because obviously we connect with the same computer system that the aliens do.
That's right. Whatever. I couldn't even get on Google Plus to 12 o'clock, but they could get into the aliens' computer system. Google Plus completely locked me out, which is why we were late today. But they can get up into the spaceship.
And then that leads me to, we talked about also the sequel actually is coming out the week before 4th of July, because 4th of July is on a Monday this year.
Yeah.
So
are they doing it the Friday, the 2nd or the 1st?
No, I thought they would do that, but instead they're doing like June 24th or something like that. I was like, okay, I mean, I guess it's okay, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there's a bigger picture coming out on July 2nd or 1st or whatever that could take its place. Which they might have been afraid to go up against it. So I don't know. I've got to. Yeah, I know. It's amazing. So now now you got to go see. It's like how you gonna beat them now, because they know that you gave them a virus, so they're gonna put antivirusware on it. So you're not gonna be able to upload the virus again.
What's the premise of this new one?
It's like 10 or 15 years later, I think. I think they fit in the time frame. It was 96, and now it's 10 years later, I guess. So it would be 20.
Is the little boy is grown?
Yeah, the little boy's grown. Will Smith is no longer in it. He didn't want to do this one. So they killed off his character, but his son, it's not really his son, I guess. It was the son of his stripper girlfriend, is now, the guy who's going to do it. And then there's another young pilot in there as well, a white guy who's going to be doing stuff as well. Jeff Goldblum's still there. Bill Pullman's still there. Vivica Fox is still there. So they've got some of the cast members back. And so the base thing is, so it's been like 20 years later. They've been able to, create their weapons using the alien spacecrafts that were all destroyed. They're able to build so they can defend against if the aliens come back, but it's been quiet. But of course, sure enough, the aliens are going to start coming back now, and they're coming back now with their mothership. So it's much bigger than the one we saw before. And they're like,
was it the mothership in the first one?
That's what I thought it was.
I thought they killed the whole species.
They apparently didn't, because there's an even bigger one coming, and they call it Here Comes the Mother or something like that. So I guess we'll find out more about their history as well. But Bill Pullman's daughter, who was young in the first one, she's now grown up also, so she's in there too. So it's going to follow the same beats probably. I mean, you'll see some more massive destruction. I think they showed during the Super Bowl a commercial for the sequel, and it had them destroying a football stadium in the middle of a football game. So I guess maybe it's not going to be July 4th, and even though it's called Independence Day, why would they be playing football in July? So we'll see. We'll see.
A baseball game.
Yeah, it could have been a baseball game, or maybe it is. Maybe they just made it a football game because it was a Super Bowl, and then they'll make it a baseball. I don't know, but they show it destroying the stadium while the teams are playing and stuff like that, and then it shows this giant ship, and Jeff Goldblum goes back into outer space and doesn't know. He's like, I don't know what to do. He's like, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how I'm going to beat him, stuff like that. So it should be interesting. It's one of the things that I don't know if I want to see it or not.
I'll end up seeing it because my kids are going to want to see it.
Yeah, I'll probably end up seeing it too.
We'll be there.
With Jurassic World, it came out last year. I wanted to see it because it was interesting. He's got Chris Pratt in it, and I wanted to see him tame the raptors. But this one, it just doesn't have quite the same thrills for it. But obviously, it's still months away. Maybe I'll change my mind up on that. We'll see. But that's that's to see what that's. So again, Emmerich's coming back. He's probably going to destroy some more things, and then if we decide to do Son of Disaster films, we can throw that in there as well. Because there's a lot of there's a lot of ones. All the old ones. The Earthquake and the Towering Inferno and San Andreas that just came out. War of the Worlds. The Stand was one I had that I was thinking about also. Where it was they killed everybody and then stuff like that. So it's kind of natural disaster-esque. So there's a lot of disaster films out there, and there's still plenty more to come down the line because they are a fairly easy to make film. You just follow the same format usually and just destroy stuff. You just need to get more creative with your destruction. Okay, we've seen it all before. It ain't gonna if you don't get creative, it ain't gonna be fun. So. On that note, that's the end of the disaster. So we survived a disaster film. Hooray! So we'll see what happens. Next month is our show in May. Geri and I are going to do top 10 superhero films because Free Comic Book Day is going to be the weekend before our show, and then the new Civil War movie comes out, and I think there's something else, an X-Men film I think is coming out in May also, so there's going to be all kinds of superhero things as well, so that'd be cool. And then I think I like the idea of June doing the Tim Burton one, because I really want to talk about Tim Burton films, because I love like that. Oh, Scotty. Yeah, the crazy. So yeah, he just said in the Independence Day sequel, the crazy scientist who was played by Data from Star Trek Next Generation, he's back. Yeah. I thought he died. He somehow survived.
What about Randy Quaid's kids? Remember?
Yeah, I remember that. I don't know. I haven't seen anything with them in it. It's possible they could be
like the hero.
Yeah, he was. It could be possible he could be lingering around there. And then Scott says, "I hope Alabama's playing in the stadium that gets destroyed." That's funny. So we've got our next 2 months pretty much covered, so that'll be cool. We'll let you know the dates if anything comes up for either Geri or I. Oh, geez, you know what?
Well, May 8th is Mother's Day. Yeah.
Yeah, we might move that to. We'll figure it out. We'll figure something out. No. Actually, that's the first weekend of May. It would be actually the 14th. It'd be the 14th, 15th.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, but no, what I was thinking about is June. We might have to think about something else because that's Snark Stock weekend. Yeah. Maybe we do a live show together.
Yeah, that would be cool.
We'll see. We'll work it out. We still got time to. Yeah. Oh wait, no, hold on. You're right. No, the 8th is Mother's Day. No, you're right. Okay. That's weird.
I just know that the Sunday is the 8th. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's weird though, because when I was on the show with MJ last week, I thought the 8th was the first week. That would be the day of our episode. Okay. We'll figure something else out then. Okay. Because 7th is Free Comic Book Day. We'll figure something out.
Maybe that night.
We could do it. We could do it Saturday night. Maybe that might not be too bad. Okay. Yeah. Awesome. So I'll be in touch with you. We'll work it out, and we'll let everybody out there know we're going to be up. So good on that. So on that note, time to say goodbye. Thanks for watching. Next week, I think, is my solo show. I have no idea what I'm going to talk about yet. So we'll see what the week brings, and I'll be able to talk about something then. So on that note, thanks, Geri, for hanging out. And we will say goodbye. And you know what? If you want just to watch something silly and brainless and fun, disaster films are always the best way to go with it, and just sit back, relax, and just laugh. And definitely check out Cinema Sins. Check out their breakdown of the disaster films like Independence Day and Day After Tomorrow and Volcano. It's actually extraordinary. It's freaking hilarious. It's great how they destroy it. And Armageddon especially. Anything when they're destroying Armageddon is perfect. I know I'm terrible. All right. Someday we should probably do the best Michael Bay films.
Oh, that list would make you miserable.
Yes, it would. We ain't going to do that now. Maybe 2. All right. See you guys later. Bye-bye.